This story happened in 2003 and resembles a suspense plot. The residents of the small town of Nome, located on the west coast of Alaska, were shocked when the naked body of Sonia Ivanov, a local 19-year-old resident, was discovered on the outskirts of town. The population of Nome at the time was just over 3,000 inhabitants, and all these people knew each other by sight. The terrible discovery made the residents question how well they truly knew their neighbors, friends, and colleagues. After all, perhaps the killer was one of them. Sonia Doronichuk Ivanov was born on April 13, 1984, in Unalakleet, Alaska. She was one of 6 children in her family and belonged to an indigenous population, specifically the Anupiyad, one of the Eskimo peoples. After graduating high school with honors, Sonia aimed for college. Having spent her life in a place with severe weather, she dreamed of moving to Hawaii but needed money, which she decided to earn on her own. In 2002, Sonia left her hometown of Unalakleet, where about 600 people lived, and moved to Nome. There, she got a job as a secretary at the local hospital and began saving up for her dream trip to Hawaii in the fall of 2003. Sonia planned to go to Hawaii, but all her expectations were shattered weeks before her departure. After moving to Nome, Sonia lived in the same room with her friend Tamara. On the night of August 10, 2003, they went out together to meet other friends. Shortly after 1 a.m., Sonia went home, while her friend and roommate Tamara decided to go out with other friends. As the residents of Nome knew each other, neither Sonia nor her friends were worried when she went home. However, upon returning home, Tamara found Sonia's room empty the next morning. She started calling Sonia and her friends to find out where she was, but no one knew her whereabouts. Tamara, optimistic until the end, did not report Sonia's disappearance until August 12, at 5:16 p.m., about 40 hours after she went missing. The police initiated an investigation and examined Sonia's room, finding her belongings and some documents, which led them to conclude that the girl could not have simply left the town. On August 13, the search began, involving local police and volunteers. That same day, at 8:30 a.m., one of the search teams found Sonia's body near a quarry on the outskirts of town. At the time, the local police office consisted of 8 people, a chief, and 7 officers in different positions. What they all had in common was a lack of experience in investigating crimes of this nature. Realizing this, the police chief in Nome requested help from the state police. A team of investigators and forensic experts flew in from Anchorage. While waiting for their arrival, the local police did everything possible to preserve the crime scene. With rain approaching, they decided to cover the body with a tarp. A large number of photographs were taken in advance in case the rain destroyed any potential evidence. On August 14, the Anchorage police officers arrived at the scene and immediately began working. Sonia's body was naked, except for a sock on her left foot. She was not wearing anything else, and no clothing or personal belongings were found during the initial examination. The forensic scientist found a bullet entry wound in the back of the head, which was hidden under the hair. After finishing work at the scene, the body was sent for an autopsy. During the forensic examination, it was determined that the cause of the girl's death was a bullet wound to the back of the head. Despite being naked, there were no signs that Sonia had had sexual intercourse before her death, nor did she have any defensive injuries. Given that the bullet removed from her head was fired at close range, her death seemed more like an execution. While the Anchorage officers examined the evidence received, the local police interviewed Sonia's friends and acquaintances, trying to find out who might have wanted to harm her. However, this ended up yielding no results, as the girl had no conflicts with anyone and got along well with everyone. As time passed, tension among the townspeople grew, as the perpetrator could very well be a familiar person who was still at large. 6 weeks after Sonia's death, on September 23, 2003, a patrol car with the license plate 321 was stolen from the local police parking lot. Officer Byron Redburn, to whom the car was assigned, drove his private car around the town and nearby areas in search of the stolen car. He did this at night, assuming that if the patrol car was stolen by teenagers for entertainment, they would likely turn on the emergency lights and be visible from a distance. Officer Redburn's private car had a radio tuned to a police frequency. Around 3:30 a.m., he heard his colleague, Officer Owens, who was on duty that night, calling for backup. Owens reported finding a stolen car near one of the mines and, when trying to approach it, was shot at. Redburn immediately ran to help and upon arrival found Owens, scared but thankfully unharmed. The shooter managed to escape by abandoning a stolen patrol car with the license plate 321. A few minutes later, other officers arrived, and the area was cordoned off. At dawn, a helicopter was used to try to locate the man who stole the car and shot at a police officer, but the search was unsuccessful. The intruder managed to escape. Of particular interest was the car with license plate 321. The driver's side window was broken, and that was apparently how the abductor entered. However, it was not so much this that was important, but the envelope that was on the passenger seat. Inside it was Sonia's work badge with her name and photo, along with a threatening letter. The letter said, "Police, I hate all of you. Sonia was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You should be more careful. I watch your every move. Leave me alone, and I'll leave you. But I'll shoot you in the head if you come close." The author of the letter made it clear to the police that it would be better to stop investigating Sonia, directly indicating that the person who left it was involved in her death. There were no fingerprints, DNA, or other evidence on the envelope. What happened only reinforced the belief that someone in the community, whom everyone should know, was playing a double game. In these situations, people begin to lose trust and even become suspicious of those closest to them. A threatening letter was found in a stolen police car on September 24, 2003. However, to continue, we need to go back to the night Sonia went home alone, around 2:30 a.m. on August 11, 2003. Two local residents, Florence Habros and her sister Danet, were sitting on their mother's porch when they saw someone passing by them on the sidewalk. That person was Sonia. Danet, in her final year of high school, knew Sonia as both participated in a city league basketball game. Sonia passed by the sisters at a distance of about 5 meters, and they greeted each other. Sonia continued a little ahead, and a car stopped near her, a properly marked police car. The sisters saw Sonia approach the car, and the passenger window slid down. After a few moments, she opened the door and got into the car. After that, no one saw her alive. On August 14, city officials officially confirmed that the body found near the quarry belonged to Sonia Ivanov. Florence, 32, knew she should report to the police that she and her sister saw Sonia get into a police car that night. However, she feared that if she called the station, she would be speaking to the same man who drove the police car that night. She and her sister might suffer the same fate as Sonia. However, realizing that the perpetrator might escape punishment if she didn't report what happened, Florence called the police and told everything. In the following 3 weeks, she was anxious as no developments occurred. No one contacted or interviewed her, further increasing her distrust of the police. Only 3 weeks later did one of the investigators discover information about Florence's call, which was in the case records. He immediately went to her house to take her statement. The reason she wasn't interviewed earlier was unclear, attributed to a workload backlog and confusion with phone calls. The new information drastically changed the course of the investigation. Now, the clues pointed directly to the local police station, where, in addition to the chief, there were 7 other people working. All local police officers were removed from the investigation into Sonia's death. It was necessary to find out which of the 8 local officers had picked up Sonia before her death. The suspects were narrowed down to 2, as it was revealed that only 2 officers, Officer Matthew Owens and Officer Stan Piscoya, were on duty on the night the girl disappeared. Owens and Piscoya were interrogated, and both denied any contact with Sonia that night. To determine who was lying, the officers underwent a polygraph test scheduled for September 24 to be held in Anchorage. Owens and Piscoya agreed to take the test, traveling to Anchorage by plane that day. However, on September 23, a police car was stolen, and later Owens claimed to have been shot several times by the criminal with a gun. On the 24th, Stan Piskoia boarded a plane and flew to Anchorage, where he underwent the polygraph test without difficulty. Officer Matthew Owens needed a day to recover from the night's incident, so he didn't fly to Anchorage. This made Matthew Owens the prime suspect, and investigators focused on him. A new polygraph test was scheduled for September 28, and Owens failed when questioned about the sequence of events on the night he was on duty and when Sonia disappeared. Owens began giving contradictory testimonies. Interviews with witnesses showed that no one in town saw him between 12:53 and 2:50. An investigative experiment was conducted to recreate the events of the night of September 24 when Owens found the stolen car and was supposedly shot. However, once again, Matthew gave conflicting testimonies and was confused about the details, leading investigators to conclude that the entire incident was staged. On September 23, while on duty and knowing he would fail a polygraph test, Owens, with access to car keys in the parking lot, stole a police car assigned to another officer. He orchestrated this setup to divert suspicion from himself and not attend a test for a good reason. Police professionals, after analyzing the letter found in the stolen car, concluded that the person who wrote it called the officers pigs to make everyone think he wasn't one of them. Only two people, Stan Piskoia and Matthew Owens, would have an interest in diverting suspicion from themselves. However, as Officer Piskoia traveled to Anchorage to take the polygraph test, in which he passed without difficulties, only one person was left wanting to divert attention, Matthew Owens. When Sonia's body was found, Matthew was off duty, but he still showed up at the crime scene, even though he couldn't have known about it. Information about the discovery was not communicated through police channels for fear of spreading through the town. After talking to his ex-wife, detectives discovered another important detail. The woman remembered that on August 12, Matthew called her and asked her to pick up their 4-year-old son, who was visiting him that day, earlier. This happened at 4:30 p.m., and Matthew explained that he needed to go to work earlier because a girl was missing in town. It's important to note that this conversation took place before Sonia's friend reported her as missing. Owens claimed his wife was mistaken about the date of the conversation about Sonia, but this seemed unlikely as she remembered it was his birthday. On October 25, 2003, Matthew Owens, 28, was arrested. He was dismissed from the police force and charged with Sonia Ivanov's case and tampering with physical evidence related to the simulated theft of a police car. He continued to insist on his innocence. After learning of his arrest, several women contacted the police and reported that Owens used his official position and, while on duty, forced them into intimate relationships. He threatened them with violence and told them not to think about seeking the police because the station would believe him and not them, Native women. All the women who suffered from the officer's actions had two things in common. First, they were indigenous. Second, they were intoxicated at the time of the incident. As a result of the official investigation, it was known that the local police office repeatedly ignored reports of violence. Subsequently, two women harmed by Matthew Owens' actions and the station's inaction sued the city of Nome, and both cases were settled out of court. All this information led investigators to speculate that on the night of Sonia's disappearance, Owens acted according to a familiar pattern. Perhaps he offered a ride to the girl, which is why she got into the car. However, it's possible that he pointed a gun at her, forcing her to get in. However, unlike previous victims, Sonia was not intoxicated. Knowing how things ended for her, we could conclude that she refused to yield to Owens and meet his demands. He feared the girl might report him, so he decided to get rid of her. Knowing about criminal investigations, Owens forced Sonia to undress because her DNA could have been on her clothes. This is just the authorities' version. Owens never made any confession. Detectives found during the investigation that Owens was seen at a hunting camp a few days after Sonia's death, where he was burning some items. Court documents show that the police searched the fire pit and found evidence, such as grommets from jeans and shoes matching the marks of clothes and shoes that Sonia was wearing on the night she disappeared. Also found at the search site was a keychain resembling the key to the house where Sonia lived. However, due to severe deformation by fire, experts couldn't definitively determine if it was the same key. Owens told the Nome police chief that he didn't know Sonia, but at least 7 witnesses were found who said otherwise. The murder weapon was never found. Naturally, the officer didn't use the service pistol to commit the crime. Additionally, according to court documents, the threatening note to the police was printed on a printer Owens had access to. On December 6, 2005, a jury unanimously found Matthew Owens guilty of Sonia Ivanov's murder and sentenced him to 99 years in prison. Additionally, 2 more years were added for tampering with physical evidence. After 34 years, he will be eligible to apply for parole. In 2007, the Alaska legislature signed the Sonia Ivanov Act, establishing a maximum penalty of 99 years in prison for officers who commit first-degree murder in the line of duty. Owens repeatedly appealed, but all attempts to appeal the sentence were unsuccessful.